सर्वोपनिषदो गावः दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्स सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत् गीता सुगीता कर्तव्या किमन्यैः शास्त्रविस्तरैः या स्वयं पद्मनाभस्य मुखपद्मात् विनिश्रिता एकं शास्त्रं देवकीपुत्रगीतम् एको देवः देवकीपुत्र एव एको मन्त्रस्य तस्य नामानि यानि कर्माप्येकं तस्य देवस्य सेवा. We have been relishing Arjuna's series of questions. The context and the content of Arjuna's profound questions and understanding how Bhagavan responds to Arjuna's questions and imparts quintessential wisdom. Arjuna's seventh question, right at the beginning of the 5th chapter, is a very interesting question. Arjuna asks, "Hey Krishna, sannyasam karmanam Krishna punaryogam cha samshasi yachseyah etayor yekam tanme bruhi sunishchitam." To Arjuna, the two words sannyasa and karma are binary. He understands karma and sannyasa as conflicting in nature. How can action and renunciation go hand in hand? They need to necessarily be conflicting in nature. They have to be binary. Either there can be action or there cannot be action. There can be renunciation. Arjuna here wants to understand the prescribed path for Atma Sakshatkara. Sannyasam karmanam Krishna punaryogam cha samshasi. Here, sannyasam stands for Jnana Yoga. Total renunciation of action. It is what a Jnana Nishta practices, the pathway of Jnana, the means of Jnana Yoga. Sannyasam karmanam Krishna punaryogam cha samshasi yatseyah etayor yekam tanme bruhi sunishchitam. Hey Krishna, you have prescribed two means, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. Out of these two, please do conclusively instruct what is right for me. What is the right means to adopt? Why is Arjuna asking this question? We may wonder. Krishna has detailed both Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga in the first 4 chapters of the Gita. Now Arjuna wants to understand why both Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga were detailed by Krishna. Krishna consistently keeps recommending Arjuna to perform Karma Yoga. Now, Arjuna's question is to conclusively know what is the right means and why Krishna is recommending Karma Yoga over Jnana Yoga. In the 2nd chapter of the Gita, Krishna explains the principle of Karma Yoga, and then he explains Karma Yoga as a stepping stone for the practice of Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga arises out of the fullness of performance of Karma Yoga. Therefore, he places Karma Yoga at a higher level than Jnana. He places Jnana Yoga at a higher level than Karma Yoga. Practice of Karma Yoga as a prerequisite to the practice of Jnana Yoga, leading to Atma Sakshatkara. And then in the 3rd and 4th chapters, Krishna also says one can attain Atma Sakshatkara, a state of self-realization, through practice of Karma Yoga alone, without the mediation of Jnana Yoga. He explains Karma Yoga as a self-sufficient means for Atma Sakshatkara. Not only that, on top of that, Krishna also says, even those who are qualified to perform Jnana Yoga, it is mandated to perform Karma Yoga. His recommendation is to perform Karma Yoga. And he strongly recommends Arjuna to adopt the means of Karma Yoga for Atma Sakshatkara. Hence Arjuna's question. While Jnana Yoga seemingly was projected as a means that is required for Atma Sakshatkara, why is Krishna recommending Karma Yoga? Arjuna understands that Krishna clearly has explained self-realization as the end result of both the means, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. If the results are the same, then why should one be recommended over the other? If one result is superior to the other, then there is merit to the recommendation of one path. So there are two paths. And if both the paths are leading to two different results, then obviously the recommendation of the right path would depend on the superiority of the result. However, in this case, the result is the same. The end result is a state of self-realization, Atma Sakshatkara. The result is the same, but Krishna is recommending the path of Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga. So there has to be some other reason, not the superiority of the end result. There has to be some other reason for Krishna to recommend Karma Yoga to Arjuna. So therefore, the context of Arjuna's question is to understand what is the other reason. What is the other reason other than the superiority? The result is the same. Why is Krishna recommending Karma Yoga? Sannyasam karmanam Krishna punaryogam cha samshasi yachreya etayor yekam karme brohi sunishchitam. So that's the reason Arjuna wants Krishna to conclusively tell him as to what is recommended and why it is recommended. Krishna, in his characteristic style, gives a simple answer. Sannyasa karma yogascha vishreyasa karau bhau tayostu karma sannyasat karma yogo visishyate. Hey Arjuna, to you, there is no other better path than the path of karma. While there are two means, Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga, to attain the goal of Atma Sakshatkara, Sannyasa Karma Yoga. Sannyasa is Jnana Yoga, Karma is Karma Yoga. Nishreyasa Kara Ubhav. Both lead to the state of Nishreyasa Kara. Both are Nishreyasa Kara. Both will get you the result. But Tayostu karma sannyasat karma yogo visishyate. But my recommendation is for you to adopt karma yoga. The reason, the determination of the right path here is not the superior to the result, but ease of adoption. and the efficacy of a quicker result. Efficacy in yielding quicker result. Between the two parts, Krishna is going to clearly demonstrate to Arjuna the path of Karma Yoga here, Arjuna, for you is easy to adopt. It is not easy to practice, to go on the path of Jnana Yoga. And hence, for the majority, the path of Karma Yoga is easy to adopt. Also, Karma Yoga yields results faster compared to Jnana Yoga. And hence, Krishna recommends the path of Karma Yoga to Arjuna. We need to understand that our existence is two-dimensional. Karma Yoga is so very practical. No, Krishna is talking about how to lead life successfully, efficiently, and effectively. And he is giving practical tips which can be practiced by the majority. That is the reason why Krishna is insisting that Arjuna must fight the war. He is insisting that he must do the duty. He is prescribing Karma Yoga. Our existence is two-dimensional. We have a material side and we have a spiritual side. On the material side is our body, our mind, our intellect. The material side of our existence is like a vehicle. And there is a spiritual side. The Atman, our essence, our true essence. And it is very important that we harmonize both. Karma Yoga is about harmonizing these two sides. Progress on the spiritual side is about realizing our true identity, realizing our true nature. It is all about inner growth. Progress on the material side is all about outer performance. How can we maximize outer performance and at the same time also have inner growth? This is what Karma Yoga enables us to do. It is not one or the other. It is not binary. It is not necessary for inner growth to renounce the world. And at the same time, in order to maximize outer performance, inner growth also is the prerequisite. Therefore, Karma Yoga is about harmonizing inner growth and outer performance. Inner growth is all about realizing our eternal essence, our true nature. Outer performance, maximization of our outer performance is about actualizing our potential. The material side, our body is like a vehicle given to us. Now, in the journey of life, each one of us are presented, endowed with a vehicle. Every Atman is endowed with a vehicle with which the Atman goes on a journey. The journey of life is the Atman going on a vehicle that is endowed, with which it is endowed. So every vehicle is different. Every vehicle has its own functions and features. Every physical embodiment, every physical body, when we talk about physical body, we need to also include the mind and the intellect. The packaging, every packaging is unique. Now, for maximizing outer performance, one needs to actualize one's material potential. What is our material potential? We are all gifted with unique skills and talents. Just like how every vehicle has a unique set of features and functions. And in a journey, one needs to maximize the usage of the features and functions of the vehicle to drive smoothly and effectively. Similarly, in the journey of life, this vehicle called the body, mind, and intellect, the potential of this vehicle has to be actualized. It cannot be ignored and neglected. Only when we actualize the potential, our outer performance can be maximized. Actualizing this potential is understanding that we are endowed with certain very unique faculties. Each and every one of us are gifted with unique talents and skills, God-given gifts. And when the talent that is given, the skill that is given, which is inherent to our embodiment, is expressed as a service, then we maximize our outer performance. Somebody rightly said, service is the rent we pay for our place on this planet. Karma Yoga is about maximizing our outer performance. But then, how do we actualize this potential of this body, mind, and intellect? It is very important when to do this, when the ground underneath is not changing. No, we cannot be standing on quicksand and trying to maximize our outer performance. No, we cannot be driving a vehicle on quicksand. We need to have an unchanging ground. The world is always presenting us with changes which are always happening all the time, and is always presenting us with challenges coming up all the time. Now, how do we address these challenges and at the same time also have our ground which is always remaining unchanged? That is where Karma Yoga harmonizes outer performance with inner growth. The inner growth is about realizing the unchanging, constant, blissful, eternal essence. When we are rooted in the awareness of our true nature, it is like operating on an unchanging ground. When the ground underneath remains unchanged, even if the challenges keep changing all the time, amidst all adversities, amidst all problems that come our way, one can face them without getting bogged down. So this is where Krishna talks about harmonizing outer performance with inner growth to Karma Yoga. And he says, this is the only path. This is the only path, hey Arjuna, which enables you to perform your duty in whichever stage of life you are. Perform your duty without getting bound to this world. He says, a Karma Yogi is also a Nitya Sannyasi here, Arjuna. A Karma Yogi is also a Nitya Sannyasi. Because why? In the process of performing actions, the Karma Yogi experiences freedom in action. He experiences freedom in action, he says. Why? The Karma Yogi does not give up the material life. There is no need for one to give up material life. Krishna, in fact, is very practical. He says, it is impossible to give up material life. So do not give up material life, or even don't attempt to give up material life. Give up the materialistic conception of life. It is giving up the materialistic conception of life and not giving up, because it is impossible not to engage with the world. A Karma Yogi knows that one should not equate material engagement with material engagement. Just because we engage with matter does not mean we get engaged, present by matter. Karma Yoga is about engaging with matter, at the same time also ensuring that the action is not binding but liberating in nature. And how is that possible? This is where the principle of renunciation of doership comes in. And that happens to be the central theme of the 5th chapter of the Gita. Krishna says, hey Arjuna, one needs to understand it is not the action per se which is binding. Action per se is not binding in nature. It is the motivation that drives the action, which is responsible for binding one to the cycle of samsara. If the motivation is materialistic, if the motivation is for material pleasures, obviously the action would be binding in nature. Material conception is about looking at life as the summum bonum of life as fulfillment of bodily pleasures. And if that is the perspective that drives life, then the action is binding in nature. So Krishna says, if one gives up this materialistic conception of life, then one experiences freedom in action. And the very action becomes liberating in nature. The same action that was binding now becomes liberating in nature. And Krishna says one needs to understand what is the reference point when we operate in life. What is your reference point? If the reference is our body, and when we talk about outer growth and inner growth, focus on inner and outer, we get it wrong. Let me give an analogy. Let's say we have a house and there is a periphery around the house. There is a courtyard and then there is a periphery wall. Now, if a burglar breaks into the periphery wall and comes into the courtyard, and I sitting inside the house can say the burglar is within my house if my reference of house includes my periphery wall as well. But if my reference is only the building, the central house, then I can still end up saying the burglar is not inside my house, even though he is in the courtyard. Now, if my reference is my body, and if I say I have my focus inside, if my focus is internal, then the mind also becomes my inner core. Then all the cravings, the desires in my mind become my very identity. Only what is outside my body is external. Whatever is inside my body becomes internal, becomes my very core. Now, if that is the case, then I begin to identify with my mind, with my cravings, with my desires. It's like basically letting the burglar come inside my house and not realizing the burglar has actually breached the periphery and has come inside. Now, when I identify with my body, then I actually do not recognize the burglar inside my very house. When I identify with my body, then the problems that I face, there is a catchphrase that we often use, the monkey on the back. Every problem that we face, we say the monkey on the back. But if I identify not with the body, if I identify with my true nature, the Atman, then I realize the monkey is not on my back. In fact, the monkey is inside. The monkey is actually in the mind. And it is the mind, the intruder, the cravings, the desires are actually intruders. They do not belong to me. And the Karma Yogi understands what is internal, what is external. Where do I draw the line? If I draw the line with a reference to only the body, only the external objects become external. But then everything other than my core, everything other than the Atman, everything, the content of the mind and the body are external to me. The Karma Yogi understands this. And that is the reason why he is able to rise above the dualities of life in the practice of Karma Yoga. And Krishna therefore says, Yoga Yukta Vishuddhatma Vijitatma Jitendriyaha Sarvabhutatma Bhutatma Kurvannapina Lipyate. He says, by the practice of Karma Yoga, constantly one starts to cultivate knowledge And with this cultivation of this knowledge, this yoga yukta, the one who is practicing karma yoga, the karma yogi, karma yoga nishta, he becomes vishuddhatma. He becomes vijitatma. He becomes jitendriyaha. Krishna is actually saying, even if one does not perform jnana yoga, performance of karma yoga leads to the result of Atma Sakshatkara. Performance of karma yoga purifies one's mind. Performance of karma yoga enables one to conquer one's mind. Performance of karma yoga enables one to conquer one's senses. And by conquering one's senses and one's mind, one can start experiencing one's true nature. Yoga yukta vishuddhatma. One whose mind is purified. Vijitatma. One who has mastered one's mind. Jitendriya. One who has conquered all his senses. Sarvabhutatma bhutatma kurvannapi na lipyate. The mind integrates all the stimuli that is presented from outside. All the sense organs collect all the stimulus, all the external objects as stimuli are processed by the sense organs and presented to the mind. The mind integrates all the stimuli and then acts like a display, acts like a window to the Atman. To the Atman, the mind is like the window to the external world. Mind is a tool which is used to perceive the external world. Therefore, one of the important functions of the mind is to act as a window. The mind displays the external world to the Atman. But unfortunately, if the mind is not mastered, it may not faithfully present the external world to the Atman. It no doubt integrates the external stimuli, but it can decide to present something completely different. The outer world can be very pleasant. The mind can display a horror picture to the Atman. So it is not just an ordinary display, it's a very dangerous display. But the mind also has another function which it needs to perform in addition to being a display. It also has to perform as a mirror so that the Atman can see, it can reflect the nature of the Atman. Here again, the mind plays a trick. It does not faithfully act as a mirror. Instead of faithfully reflecting the true nature of the Atman, the mind most often reflects what the world sees. What the world sees and not what my true nature is. So therefore, a complete distorted picture is also reflected. Neither it displays faithfully, nor it reflects my nature faithfully. And therefore, practice of karma yoga is to correct both these functions. That is why Krishna says, yoga yukta, the karma yoga nishta achieves very important things. Vishuddhatma. The mind is purified, which means the mind does a faithful display of the external world. And more importantly, it faithfully reflects my true nature. Vishuddhatma, vijitatma, jitendriya. When that happens, sarvabhutatma bhutatma, kurvanyapi lipyate. Sarvabhutatma bhutatma. Then the karma yogi also realizes that the essence in every living being, the nature of the essence is the same. The nature of the Atman in every living entity is the same. There is no difference whatsoever. The nature of the Atman, not only in human beings, but in every living entity, one gets an expansive view of reality. Looking at the sameness of the nature of the Atman in each and living entity. This leads to a state of samadarshana. The karma yogi attains a state of samadarshana, true equality, able to see the vision of the sameness of every entity, underlying diversity The Karma Yogi sees unity, sameness of all the entities. The Atman, which in each entity, the nature is the same. So this is where Krishna gives the famous example. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini Shunichaiva Swapake Panditaha Samadarshinaha. Irrespective of the nature of the outer embodiment, the physical configuration, doesn't matter. The physical configuration, but the underlying essence is the same. When that is the same, then the Karma Yogi does not have any likes or dislikes. No strong likes, no strong dislikes, no strong attachments, no aversions, no hatreds. Therefore, one is able to perform actions which are liberating in nature. And this is where the key component of Karma Yoga is highlighted. This is where Krishna clarifies to Arjuna the principle of renunciation that he talked about earlier. The renunciation of doership, kartrutva tyaga, which he briefly talked about in the earlier chapters. In the 5th chapter, kartrutva tyaga becomes the central message. Krishna explains this beautifully. Naiva kinchit karomiti yukto manyeta tattvavit. Pashyan shrinvan sprishan jigran ashnan gachan swapan spashan pralapan vishajan grinnan unmishan nimishan napi indriyadeshu artanta iti dharayan. Pashyan shrinvan sprishan jigran ashnan gachan swapan spashan pralapan vishajan grinnan unmishan nimishan napi indriyadeshu artanta iti dharayan. Krishna talks about all the various activities carried out by our karmendriyas, our jnanendriyas, all our organs of action, all our organs of perception, and our pranas. All the physical activities, Krishna says, they are all carried out by your sense organs, your body. Hey Arjuna, in reality, they do not belong to you. Naiva kinchit karomiti yukto manyeta tattvavit. Therefore, ascribe doership to your body. Ascribe doership to your sense organs. It is the sense organs which interact with the sense objects and all the physical activities because of this. We need to understand this a little bit more carefully. When Krishna says, you are a non-doer, ascribe doership to your body. Immediately we ask this question. So are we not the doer of our actions? If I am not the doer, then where is the accountability? If I am not the doer, then I can get away doing whatever I want. There is no accountability for my actions. And if I am not the doer, why should I be experiencing? Why should I be the experiencer? If I'm not the doer, it is unfair for me to experience the results of any action. This is where Krishna says you need to understand here, Arjuna, the non-doership very carefully. Akartrutva is not equal to akarana. It's akartrutva does not mean non-performance of action. Krishna talks about ascribing doership. It is only cultivation of the attitude of non-doership. This non-doership is non-doership of actions which result in papa and punya. Akartrutva here is not doing actions which are either papa karma or punya karma. Krishna says, for the Atman, actions which can be classified as papa karma or punya karma are only acquired because of its association with the body. If the Atman is not associated with the body, then there is no need for the Atman to perform actions which lead to either papa or punya. Papa or punya, papa karma or punya karma, are two kinds of actions which happen only because of the association of the Atman with the body. Therefore, ascribe doership to the body. If there is no body, Atman has no need to perform actions which are either punya or papa. And that is the reason why Krishna says, cultivate the attitude of non-doership. Non-doership of actions which can be categorized either as papa or punya. Because any action that we do with the body, with our sense organs, can be fundamentally classified into two areas, papa karma, punya karma. If we keep performing these two kinds of actions, papa karma and punya karma, we continue to be in the cycle of samsara. Even if we only keep performing punya karma all the time, even then there is no liberation. We continue, the Atman continues to be in the cycle of samsara. So therefore, any action which can be either punya or papa is not liberating in nature. One needs to transcend papa karma and both papa karma and punya karma. And how is that possible? Not by giving up action, but by ascribing actions to the body. This is the principle of non-doership. Basically saying that every action is performed because of the reaction of the sense organs to the external world. It is by design that the sense organs react to the external world. Whether we like it or not, the body with all its indriyas is designed to perform in a certain way. If there is an external object, the sense organ will automatically react and process that stimuli. This is how the design is. Pashyan, Shrinman, Sprishan, Jigran, Ashnan, Gachan, Swapan, Swashan. These are all various. Pashyan, seeing. The eye, when it is open, sees an object. When the object is in front of the eye, and if the eye is open, the eye automatically reacts to the object. So the seeing is a physical reaction, which happens by design. Now, the eye may see the object, but is it necessary that that object should create an emotion in my mind? That's a question mark. The physical reaction then activates the emotions in my mind. The emotional activation triggers a desire. That's the second step. The first step is a physical reaction. And this physical reaction happens by design. But after the physical reaction then triggers an emotional activation of a desire in my mind. This emotional activation of the desire in my mind can then transform into an intention to indulge. Now we see there are three steps here. The first step is unavoidable. The first step is unavoidable, it's by design. The eye will see an external object. That's a physical reaction. The eye is designed to see. The second step, the stimulus of that object that enters through the eye to the mind triggers a desire for the object. This is an emotional activation. This again is a product of the mind. This also does not belong to the Atman. If there is no desire in my mind for that object, then that desire is not activated. The Atman has nothing to do with that desire for that object or nothing to do with the emotion that arises. The third step, that emotional activation can result in an intention to indulge in that object. So I see a sweet, that sweet triggers a desire. That desire can result in an intention to indulge in eating that sweet. Now, this intention to indulge is also of two kinds. It can be an unconscious intention or a conscious intention. Most often it is unconscious intention. My desire overpowers my will. And without I consciously intending, automatically my hand reaches out to the sweet and grabs it. I see a sweet on the table. The sweet, the physical reaction happens. Once the physical reaction triggers emotional activation, the desire in my mind, it automatically transforms into an unintentional, unconscious intention. Even without I actually intending, exercising my will, my hand reaches out and picks up the sweet. So Krishna says, the seeing of the sweet, that physical reaction triggering the desire in the mind, that desire transforming into an unconscious intention to grab and eat the sweet, all of that is because of not the Atman, it is because of the body, the sense organs, the body, the mind, and the vasanas and the desires in the mind. They do not belong to the Atman. And only when the Atman begins to bring a distance between the physical reaction and the emotional activation of the desire in the mind and the intention to indulge, by exercising the will, the Atman can intentionally eat or not eat the sweet. Then a karma yogi brings a distance. The principle of non-doership here is to essentially ascribe doership of every activity to the sense organs, to the body, and to the mind, and realize that all these actions do not belong to the Atman. They are all acquired. All these actions which can lead to papa or punya are not natural. Just like how the true nature of water is cool, to be cool. But when this water is put on fire, it acquires the property of heat. The water begins to boil. Now, heat is an acquired property of water. Coolness is its natural state. Similarly, doership, the doing of papa karma and punya karma, is acquired nature. The doership of papa and punya is acquired by the Atman. They do not belong naturally to the Atman. So Krishna says, ascribe doership to the body, ascribe doership to all the sense organs, and engage in activity. And when one performs actions with that attitude of non-doership, Krishna says, Brahmanyadhaya karmani sangam tyaktva phalanit karoti saha. And he gives the beautiful example. Lipyatena sapapena padmapatra vimamsa. He says, then this karma yogi, Brahmanyadhaya karmani, by ascribing doership to the instruments of Prakriti, to the body and the sense organs, when the karma yogi performs actions, padmapatra vimamsa, just like how the lotus leaf never gets soaked in water. Even though it is floating on the water, it never gets soaked. Similarly, the karma yogi never gets soaked in worldliness. Every action he performs based on the principle of doership. When one practices the principle of non-doership, it also becomes easy to cultivate detachment from the result. When the action that I perform is my action, then the result also becomes mine. When I keep saying, I am the performer of this action belongs to me, then naturally I also develop attachment to the result of the action. But if I keep saying, I am not the sole performer of the action, I also can begin to say, I am not the sole cause of the result as well. I am not the sole performer of the action. I am not the sole cause of the results of the action. So therefore, non-doership also helps in detaching from the results of the action. That is why Krishna gives the example of the lotus, which remains detached even though it floats on water, it is not soaked in water. The karma yogi does not get soaked in worldliness. Kayena manasa buddhya kevalair indriyairapi yogina karma kurvanti sangam tyaktva atma shuddhaye. Kayena manasa buddhya, kayena manasa buddhya. With his body and with his mind, the karma yogi performs actions with determination and discrimination. Kevalaha, by renouncing doership. Indriyerapi, with all the indriyas, the body, mind, the karma yogi continues to perform actions. Yogina karma kurvanti sangam tyaktva atma shuddhaye. Performs actions only for the purification of the mind, only for inner growth, knowing that outer performance is a byproduct of inner growth. When the inner growth happens, outer performance also gets maximized. The karma yogi understands that one must not work against the body, one must not work for the body, one must work with the body. Working for the body means catering to the pleasures of the body, being a slave of the body. Working against the body is trying to suppress. That also is counterproductive. Working for the body, working with the body is to ensure that one realizes the potential of the body. It is like, again, taking the example of the journey, one is presented with a vehicle, one needs to understand that one can maximize the potential of the vehicle to drive towards safely toward the right direction. The karma yogi, by practicing karma yoga, keeps acquiring knowledge, strengthening his knowledge. And as one starts to acquire more knowledge, one gets the direction in one's life right. While the direction can change, the vehicle remains the same. The vehicle remains the same. This body is the same. Before and after. Before enlightenment and after enlightenment, it's the same body. The body has not changed. It is only the direction which has got changed. It is the same body now which has to travel in the right direction. The vehicle that was taking in the wrong direction is the same vehicle. Once the direction is right, it is the same vehicle which will take us in the right direction. The direction has changed. Jnana now gets the direction right, but the vehicle remains the same. The body remains the same. The body is still needed to be used, to be leveraged. The faculties that are given by Bhagavan, the gifts, the talents, the potential needs to be maximized. That is why the karma yogi realizes this. Kayena manasa buddhya kevalair indriyairapi yogina karma kurvanti. He knows that he needs not to work for or against the body, work with the body. Use the same vehicle which was producing binding actions before, now can produce liberating actions. And by doing that, one cultivates jnana and knowledge blossoms out of performance of karma yoga. Jnanena tu tadajnanam na tesham nashitam atmanaha tesham adityavat jnanam prakashayati tatparam. But this knowledge now that results out of the performance of karma yoga, this knowledge of one's own nature, it's like the sun that illumines. It illumines the outer part and it illumines the inner world. Just like how the sun drives away darkness. When we are in the dark, we keep stumbling, we keep struggling, not knowing where to go, which direction to go. Now, there is no point in cursing the darkness. There's no point in cursing all the blocks. The only solution is to switch on the light. And when the light is switched on, the darkness is automatically driven, completely driven away. Similarly, when one acquires Atma Jnana, then one need not struggle with individual problems in life. Every challenge, every adversity, every distress need not be individually addressed. Just like how once in the dark rooms, the light is switched on, There could be several blockades. We no longer struggle with each and every one of them. The path is very clear. Once the room is illumined, then there is no more struggle. Similarly, for a karma yogi, the challenges remain. Within the same room, when it was dark, there were several blockades. There were several blocks, which was because of which the one was stumbling, one was struggling. But once the room was lit up, the same blockades remain, but one sees the path through all these blockades. Similarly, once jnana blossoms, it becomes easy to travel on the right path. This is what the karma yogi becomes undiluted, becomes steady-minded, has no likes or dislikes, and he derives happiness from within. And therefore, Krishna says that is the end result of, that is the culmination of karma yoga. Culmination of karma yoga is that the karma yogi realizes that the source of happiness is not the external world. The external world, the world of objects, after all, only is a source of dukkha, is not a source of sukha. Ehi samparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya yevate adyantavantak kaunteya nateshu ramate buddha. Adyantavantak kaunteya nateshu ramate buddha. Krishna clearly says a karma yogi realizes that the source of happiness is not all the objects around. The world of objects, the external objects, are in fact a source of dukkha. Ehi samparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate, he says. Samparshaja, the interaction of the sense organs with the sense objects, when they produce pleasures, these pleasures are actually sources of sorrow, are not sources of real happiness. A karma yogi realizes that, because he realizes that these pleasures are subject to 5 doshas. Arjuna dosha, rakshana dosha, kshaya dosha, bhoga dosha, himsa dosha. 5 defects. Every dosha is a defect. Every pleasure that is the result of the interaction of the sense objects and the sense organs is subject to 5 defects. A karma yogi realizes this because of the purification of the mind, because of the jnana that blossoms. Arjuna dosha. Dosha that is due to the nature of acquisition. In the process of acquiring things, we postpone happiness. We are constantly chasing pleasures, and in the process of acquisition, Arjuna is acquisition, having more and more. In the process of acquiring, we always end up postponing happiness. One day I will have a good time. Right now is not the time. We keep postponing things, thinking that there will be a day when everything will be all right. Happiness is always postponed. That is Arjuna dosha, Rakshana dosha. While acquisition is one problem, securing what is acquired is a bigger problem. We need more locks and more keys. We are always constantly worried about securing things that we possess. And in that process, we may possess hundreds and hundreds of things, but that fear of losing them will always keep us in a troubled state. Not able to enjoy, experience true happiness out of those possessions. No possession will give us true happiness because of Rakshana dosha. The wanting to keep them secure, the fear of security. Kshaya dosha, law of diminishing returns. A pleasure which is a result of the sense organs interacting with the sense objects are always subject to law of diminishing returns. Never remains constant. Nothing remains constant. One moment is a pleasure, the next moment is a pain. Everything that we think is pleasurable has to transform into something which is painful in one way or the other. That's the law of life. Bhoga dosha. The more we try to fulfill a desire, it's like pouring ghee in fire. The more we try to fulfill a desire, greater the intensity of the desire. That is bhoga dosha. Himsa dosha. In the process of fulfilling desires, we end up performing, end up taking up violent means. Need not be physical violence, but it can be mental violence as well. So Krishna says a karma yogi understands that these pleasures are subject to various doshas, various defects. Nateshu ramate buddha. Man of discrimination will not try to derive happiness from all these world of external objects. He derives happiness from within. And therefore, this karma yogi reaches a state of steady-minded, contemplative state. He reaches a state where he is able to master his mind. He is able to experience his own true nature. And he becomes fit for dhyana. He becomes fit for meditative way of life and living. And thus Krishna concludes the 5th chapter by saying, hey Arjuna, even without adopting Jnana Yoga, a karmanishta, a practitioner of karma yoga can obtain Atma Sakshatkara and reach a state where one can experience one's own true nature, and with the prerequisite of Atma Sakshatkara, one becomes fit to also move to the next step of realizing the Paramatma through the process of dhyana. And when Krishna concludes this, obviously Arjuna would want to know more about how to cross this chasm from Atma Sakshatkara to move on to Paramatma Sakshatkara. And that is where, to fill this gap between these two states, Krishna will talk about the process of Dhyana Yoga, meditation, mastery of the mind. We will see this more in the next session. Until then, let us continue to contemplate on the significance of performing actions by ascribing doership to the instruments of Prakriti, the principle of non-doership. It's a very profound principle which needs to be reflected upon, contemplated to understand more and more. More of this Krishna will talk about later in the coming chapters as well, and a lot more in the 18th chapter. But until then, let us continue to reflect on Akartritva Anusandhana, the practice of non-doership, which is central to Karma Yoga. So, Krishna.